All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening up a topic that probably occupies what 80% of our waking thoughts, whether we like to admit it or not.
Oh, it's
It dictates where we live, what we eat, how we spend our days, and, often how we sleep at night. We're talking about money.
it's the one topic that is just, it's absolutely everywhere. It affects all of us. It confuses most of us. And usually we're taught to think about it in a completely wrong way.
Exactly. We tend to treat it like physics, with
Hmm.
laws, formulas, spreadsheets. But to help us kind of reframe our entire financial existence, we are diving deep into The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
And I have to say, looking at the research here, this is not your typical investment guide.
No, there are no hot stock tips here.
Absolutely not. If you're tuning in looking for a spreadsheet to optimize your tax returns or like a formula to get rich by next Tuesday, you're probably in the wrong place. Housel's whole premise is fascinating because he argues that doing well with money has very little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave.
Behavior over smarts. I
Mm.
love that. And to really hammer this home, the source material starts with this incredible mystery. I mean, it's a comparison that honestly just shouldn't exist in a rational world.
It shouldn't.
It's the story of the janitor and the executive.
It is the perfect juxtaposition to set the stage. So in one corner, you have a man named Ronald Reed.
Okay.
Ronald was a rural Vermont janitor and a gas station attendant. He was a definition of a low-key guy, lived in a tiny house, bought his clothes at CVS, and his main hobby, his big excitement in life, was chopping firewood.
He sounds like the kind of guy you just wave to and never think twice about.
Exactly. He lived a quiet life and died at the age of 92. But when he died, this humble janitor made international headlines.
Why?
Because when they looked at his estate, they found he had left over $8 million to charity.
$8 million.
$8 million.
From a janitor's wage? I mean, how is that even possible? It's hard to wrap your head around.
It just defies logic. But
Mm.
then let's look at the other corner of the ring. You have a guy named Richard Fuscone.
Okay.
Now, Richard is the total opposite of Ronald Reed. Richard is Harvard educated. He's a Merrill Lynch executive with an MBA. He was on Crane's business 40 under 40 list. I mean, he was a master of the universe.
The guy who did everything right on paper. The absolute prodigy.
Everything. He retired early to a massive mansion in Connecticut. And we aren't talking about like a normal big house.
Well,
We are talking about a compound with 2 elevators, 2 swimming pools, 7 garages. The absolute picture of financial success.
okay, so you have the janitor and the tycoon. I see where this is going.
Right. But then the 2008 financial crisis hits. And while the janitor, Ronald Reed, is quietly compounding his millions in the background, the executive, Piscone, gets absolutely wiped out.
No way.
He goes bankrupt. He stands before a bankruptcy judge and declares he has no income. His massive house with the 2 elevators gets foreclosed on.
And this brings us to the central question of this whole deep dive, right? In what other industry, what other field can a janitor with no training massively outperform a top-tier expert?
That's the hook. I mean, think about it. You would never, ever see a janitor perform a better heart transplant than a Harvard-trained surgeon.
Impossible. It's physically impossible.
Right. You'd never see a janitor design a better skyscraper than a trained architect. It just doesn't happen.
In those fields, training, raw intelligence, data, that stuff dictates the outcome. If you don't know the science, you fail. Period.
But in finance, it happens. A janitor can beat a professional. And the reason, as Housel points out, is that finance isn't a hard science like physics or engineering.
It's a soft skill.
It's a soft skill. We're treating money like it's math, but it's actually psychology.
So it's all about how our heads work, not just how the market works.
Precisely. We need to unpack these soft skills of wealth, greed, and happiness. Because if you can control your behavior, you can beat the genius who can't. And that is a very, very empowering thought.
It is. It totally levels the playing field. So let's unpack this. Part 1 of our dive is called The Lens of Experience. And the main idea here is from a chapter Housel calls No One's Crazy.
This is such a vital starting point because we judge people constantly for how they spend or invest their money.
All the time.
We look at someone making a risky bet or buying a house they can't afford or, hoarding cash under a mattress and we think, are they insane? Do they not see the math?
Right, what are you doing?
But Housel argues that no one is actually crazy. We are just products of our own specific, unique history.
He has this stat that just blew my mind. He says, your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world.
A tiny fraction.
But they constitute maybe 80% of how you think the world works?
It's the theory of anchoring. We are all anchored to the specific time and place we were born. You can read about history, sure. You can read about the Great Depression. You can look at the charts of inflation in the 1970s.
But you can't feel it?
You cannot emotionally relive the fear, the uncertainty, and the scarring of those moments. It's just data to you. It's not a lived experience.
So two people can look at the exact same stock market chart today and see two completely different realities.
Yeah.
Just based on when they were born.
Exactly. Let's look at the data because it paints such a clear picture. Imagine you were born in, say, 1970.
Okay.
That means during your teens and your 20s, your formative years, when your brain is developing its baseline for how the world works, the S&P 500 increased almost tenfold.
So you're just seeing green arrows everywhere. Everything's going up.
You are seeing the market as a wealth-generating machine. You're likely to be optimistic. You think, if I put money in, it grows. That is your lived emotional truth.
But what if you were born 20 years earlier, say 1950?
If you were born in 1950, the market went literally nowhere during your teens and 20s.
Oh.
It was flat. And if you adjust for inflation, you actually lost money holding stocks during that period. So those two groups of people, equally smart, looking at the same data later in life, are going to have fundamentally different gut reactions to the stock market.
One sees opportunity, the other sees a scam.
Or at least a dangerous casino. And you
Yeah.
can't verify that feeling with a spreadsheet. It's hardwired into their dopamine receptors.
And this isn't just about stocks, right? This applies to inflation, too.
Oh, huge. I mean, if you grew up in 1960s America, you saw prices triple. You remember the gas lines. You remember your parents stressing about the cost of milk. You have a visceral kind of trauma response to the word inflation.
You feel it in your bones.
You do. But if you were born in 1990, inflation has been low your whole life, at least until very recently. For most of your life, it was just a textbook concept. You just don't fear it in the same way.
That makes so much sense. We're all walking around with these customized, biased lenses. But I do want to push back on this no one is crazy idea a little bit.
Go for it.
What about behaviors that seem objectively mathematically bad? Like, let's talk about lottery tickets.
The lottery ticket paradox. Yeah, this is a tough one for a lot of people to grasp, especially if you're financially comfortable.
The numbers are just staggering. Americans spend more on lottery tickets than on movies, video games, music, sporting events, and books combined.
Combined, it's a massive, massive industry.
And when you break it down, it's mostly lowest-income households who are buying them. The data says they spend, on average, over $400 a year on tickets.
412, I think it was.
And the kicker is, these are often the same folks who, when surveyed, say they couldn't come up with $400 in an emergency. So from the outside, looking at the math, that looks irrational. It looks crazy.
It looks like they're burning the very safety net they desperately need.
Exactly.
But let's put on that lens of experience we just talked about. Housel really challenges us to use empathy here. If you were living paycheck to paycheck, the traditional American dream, the house, the vacation, the retirement, that is statistically out of reach for you.
You can't save your way to $1 million on minimum wage.
Exactly. Saving that $400 a year isn't going to buy them a house. Putting that $400 in a savings account might yield them, a few pennies of interest? It doesn't change their life.
It's a drop in the bucket.
Right. But the ticket, that lottery ticket, is the only time in their lives they can hold a tangible dream in their hands. For a few minutes or a few hours until the numbers are drawn, they have a non-zero chance of getting the good stuff that everyone else seems to take for granted.
So they aren't paying for a return on investment.
No. They are paying for a feeling of hope, a feeling of what if.
Wow.
Yeah.
That really flips the script. It doesn't make it a smart financial move in a mathematical sense, but it makes it understandable.
Exactly. And that's the key takeaway here. We do crazy things because we are all just trying to make sense of the world based on our unique, limited struggles. If you can understand that, you stop judging and you start understanding behavior.
That's a powerful idea. All right, moving on to part 2. We're looking at what Housel calls the silent forces. And this is about luck, risk, and the magic of compounding.
These are the siblings, luck and risk. We tend to view them as completely different things. One is good, one is bad, but they are really the same mechanism.
How so?
They are the reality that outcomes in your life are not 100% within your control. They are the outside forces you can't predict.
And the example the source material uses to illustrate this is the story of Bill Gates. Now, obviously, Bill Gates is a genius and a hard worker. We aren't trying to take that away from him.
No, not at all.
But there was a massive element of luck involved right at the very beginning.
Extraordinary luck. And for this, we have to go back to 1968. Bill Gates attended a place called Lakeside School in Seattle. Now, Lakeside wasn't just a regular private school.
No.
It was one of the only high schoolers in the entire world that had a computer.
And we aren't talking about a MacBook here. We're talking about something very different.
Oh, no. We were talking about a Teletype Model 30 hooked up to a mainframe computer. This was ridiculously cutting-edge stuff. Most universities didn't have this. Most tech companies didn't have this. It allowed for real-time programming, which was just, it was unheard of.
So let's look at the math here, because the odds are startling.
The math helps frame the luck component perfectly. So in 1968, there were about 303 million high school-age kids in the world.
Okay, a big number.
Of those, about 18 million lived in the U.S., about 100,000 of those lived in the Seattle area, and only about 300 attended Lakeside School.
So Gates had a literally 1 in a million head start.
Yes. Gates himself is very open about this. He says, if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft. That is the luck component. He was the right person, absolutely, but he was also in the exact right place at the exact right time.
But the story gets deeper and, frankly, much sadder when you look at the risk component. Because Bill Gates had a best friend at Lakeside.
Kent Evans.
Right. And by all accounts, Kent was just as brilliant as Bill, right?
He was his equal. They were the dynamic duo of computer prodigies. They had the same business mind, the same ambition. They actually founded a company together in high school. The plan was they were going to conquer the world together.
So Kent Evans would have been a co-founder of Microsoft.
It's almost certain he would have been, but most people have never heard of him.
Why not?
Because before they graduated high school, Kent died in a mountaineering accident.
Oh, that's just tragic.
It's deeply tragic. And now, look at the odds again. The risk of being killed on a mountain in high school is roughly 1 in a million.
That is chilling. 1 in a million luck, 1 in a million risk.
It is. Bill Gates experienced 1 in a million luck. Kent Evans experienced 1 in a million risk. It is the same force probability, just working in opposite directions.
So what's the lesson there? Is it just that life is completely random and we should give up?
No, absolutely not. The lesson is about humility and forgiveness. It means be careful how you judge success and how you judge failure.
Don't assume the billionaire did everything perfectly.
Right, and don't assume the person who failed was lazy or stupid. Because luck and risk play such a big role, we shouldn't study the extreme examples, the outliers, the billionaires, too closely.
Right. Don't try to replicate the exact path of the lottery winners.
Exactly. It's so dangerous to try and emulate a strategy that might have just been lightning striking once. We should look for broad patterns instead. Look for things that work for most people most of the time.
Stick to the averages. Speaking of broad patterns and big results over time, let's talk about compounding, because Housel uses an analogy here that I had never heard before, and it involves the ice ages.
This is one of my favorite parts of the research because it applies geology to finance. It's fantastic. We used to think ice ages were caused by super-duper cold winters.
Right, that the Earth just froze over one day.
But the science actually shows they are caused by moderately cool summers.
Wait, summers? That sounds completely counterintuitive.
It does, but think about it. If you have a winter with a lot of snow, that's normal. But if you have a summer that isn't quite warm enough to melt all of the previous winter's snow, that snow stays.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
And because snow is white, it reflects the sun's rays back into space. That cools the Earth down just a little bit more, which then leads to more snow the next winter, and even more snow sticking around the next summer.
It's a literal snowball effect, a feedback loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't need a single catastrophic event to freeze the Earth. You just need a little bit of snow to stick around year after year after year. Small changes plus massive amounts of time equal enormous world-changing results.
And this brings us to the king of compounding, Warren Buffett. We all know he's rich. We see the big number. But the breakdown of when he got rich is the real shocker here.
It really breaks your brain a little bit. So at the time the book was written, Buffett's net worth was about $84.5 billion.
A respectable number.
A respectable number. But listen to this. $84.2 billion of that was accumulated after his 50th birthday.
Wait, say that again? That's nearly all of it?
Almost all of it. And it gets crazier. $81.5 billion of it came after he qualified for Social Security.
That's unbelievable. So if he had retired at 60, like a normal, successful person, nobody would have ever heard of him.
Yeah,
He would have just been a well-off guy in Omaha.
precisely. Housel compares him to Jim Simons, the head of the hedge fund Renaissance Technologies. Now, Jim Simons is a math wizard. He is arguably a better pure investor.
What are his returns like?
He has generated 66% annual returns compared to Buffett's 22%.
66%. That's unheard of. That's godlike.
It is. But Simons is 75% less rich than Buffett.
Why? Just because he started later.
Exactly. Simons started hitting his stride at age 50. Buffett started investing at age 10. Buffett's secret isn't just that he's a good investor, it's that he has been a good investor for 80 years.
Yeah.
His skill is investing, but his secret is time.
The takeaway being, good investing isn't about earning the highest returns and taking the biggest risks.
Yeah.
It's about earning pretty good returns that you can sustain for the longest period of time.
Shut up and wait. That really should be the title of every single investing book.
Shut up and wait. I'd buy that. But waiting implies you have to survive long enough to see those returns. And this leads us right into part 3. Survival, tails, and the idea of enough.
This is such a crucial distinction. Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. These are two completely different skill sets. They are almost opposites.
Right. Getting money requires risk, optimism, swinging for the fences. You have to put yourself out there.
But keeping money, that requires paranoia. It requires humility. It requires you to accept that what you just made can be taken away just as quickly. You have to shift gears from attack to defense.
And we have another tale of two investors here, Jesse Livermore and Abraham Jermansky.
This takes us back to the 1929 crash. Jesse Livermore was a legend. He was known as the Great Bear of Wall Street. During the crash, while everyone else was losing their shirts, panic selling, Livermore was shorting the market. He bet that it would go down.
A very contrarian, very brave move. And he was right.
He was spectacularly right. In one single day, he made the equivalent of $3 billion.
$3 billion.
Yeah.
In one day.
He came home to his wife, who was crying because she thought they were ruined like everyone else, and he says, "No, darling, we're fabulously rich."
Wow. Now contrast that with Abraham Jermansky.
Jermansky was a successful real estate developer, a multimillionaire, and he bet big on the market continuing to rise. When the crash hit, he lost everything. He literally disappeared. It's widely believed he took his own life.
A tragic story. So Livermore wins, right? He got wealthy, he beat the crash.
He got wealthy, but he couldn't stay wealthy. And that is the tragedy of his story. Livermore was overflowing with confidence after that win. He felt like a god. He kept making bigger and bigger bets. He thought he was invincible.
And the market humbled him.
The market always humbles you eventually. 4 years later, in 1933, he had lost everything. He was completely broke. And tragically, he also took his own life.
So they both ended up in the same tragic place, just on different timelines.
Because neither of them had the survival mindset. Housel says you have to be financially unbreakable. You have to survive the lows, the recessions, the panics, the bad years, so you can stick around long enough for that compounding we just talked about to actually work.
It's not about maximizing your returns every single year. It's about never, ever getting wiped out.
Exactly. Survival is the only thing that matters in the long run. And if you survive, you open yourself up to something called tail events. This is the concept that you can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune.
Tails, you win. Explain this math to us, because in school, if you get 50% on a test, you fail.
In finance, it's completely different. A few outlier events, the tails of the distribution curve drive all the returns. Housel uses the art dealer Heinz Berggruen as a great example. He was famous for his incredible collection, Picasso's, Klee's, Matisse's.
And people just thought he had this magical eye for art, like he could spot a masterpiece from a mile away.
But the reality was he operated more like an index fund. He just bought everything. He bought tens of thousands of pieces of art. 99% of what he bought was average or completely worthless.
But the 1%.
But the 1%, the tails, the masterpieces, were the Picassos that paid for everything else 1,000 times over.
We see this in business too, right? Disney is a great example of this.
People forget that Disney was really struggling in the late 1930s. They had produced over 400 cartoons that either barely broke even or lost money. Their business model was shaky. And then they made Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That one movie, 83 minutes of film, made enough money to pay off all the company's debts, buy their studio, and set them up for the next decade.
One big hit pays for 1,000 failures.
It's the same thing with Amazon. Remember the Fire phone?
Vaguely. I think I saw one in a bargain bin once.
Exactly. It was a disaster, a massive, embarrassing failure. But Amazon Web Services and Amazon Prime are the tails that are so successful they offset every failure, like the Fire Phone, and then some.
So the lesson for the individual investor, or just generally in life, is that you don't have to be right every single time.
You just have to survive the times you are wrong. Peter Lynch, the famous investor, says if you're good at this, you're right, maybe 6 times out of 10.
That's barely better than a coin flip.
That's all you need if your winners are big enough. The real genius is simply the person who can do the average thing when everyone else is losing their mind, just waiting for those tail events to hit.
But there's a trap here, isn't there? Once you start winning, once you hit that big tail event, it is incredibly hard to stop. This is the psychology of enough.
The hardest financial skill, bar none, is getting the goalpost to stop moving.
We have to talk about Rajat Gupta. This story it makes me angry and sad at the same time.
It's an absolute tragedy. Rajat Gupta was the CEO of McKinsey. He was, by any measure, one of the most successful businessmen in the world. He was worth $100 million.
$100 million. Let's just pause on that for a second.
Yeah.
You could put that in a bank account earning 1% interest and make $1 million a year for doing nothing.
The rest of your life.
You could live on the interest of the interest for generations. He had everything. Power, prestige, freedom.
But he wanted to be a billionaire. He ran in circles with billionaires, and he felt poor by comparison. The goalpost moved. So in 2008, he committed insider trading. He sat on the board of Goldman Sachs, learned about a crucial deal involving Warren Buffett, and he tipped off a hedge fund manager to make a quick profit.
Just for a quick buck he didn't even need.
And he went to prison. He destroyed his reputation, his legacy, and his life.
And for what? To get more of something he didn't need.
That's the quote from the book that everyone should tape to their bathroom mirror.
Yeah.
There is no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need.
It's the social comparison trap. Housel compares it to a baseball player.
Right. The rookie in the league compares himself to the all-star, Mike Trout. Mike Trout compares himself to a hedge fund manager making $300 million a year. The hedge fund manager compares himself to Warren Buffett. And Buffett compares himself to, well, probably no one, hopefully.
But the point is, it's a ladder with no top. You can just keep looking up forever.
It's a battle you can never, ever win. The only way to win is to step off the ladder, to define enough for yourself, regardless of what the person next to you has.
This dovetails perfectly into part 4. If we aren't chasing money just to have a higher score than the next guy, then what is money actually for?
Freedom. Housel calls this the highest dividend that money pays. It's not the cars. It's not the houses. It's control.
He cites the Angus Campbell study here.
Yes. Campbell was a psychologist at the University of Michigan. He wanted to figure out what actually made people happy. He looked at everything. Income, geography, education, gender.
All the usual stuff.
Yeah, all of it. And he found that the strongest predictor of happiness wasn't any of those. It was having a strong sense of controlling one's own life.
Just waking up in the morning and saying, I could do what I want today.
That is the ultimate form of wealth, being able to say, I can work on this project because I want to, not because I have to, or I can take a sick day without fearing I'll lose my home. And Housel points out a historical shift here that makes this really difficult for us today.
Right, the shift from muscles to brains. From the factory to the laptop.
In 1870, most of us were farmers or factory workers. You clocked in, you used your hands, you got tired, you clocked out. When you left the factory, you didn't think about the factory. Your brain was free. You were done.
But today, most of us are knowledge workers.
Like John D. Rockefeller. There's a great story that Rockefeller rarely visited his office, but he was always working. He was paid to think. And the problem with being paid to think is that you can never really clock out.
The factory's in your head.
Exactly. It's with you at the dinner table. It's with you in the shower. It's with you at 3 a.m. when you're stressing about an email you have to send.
So we are wealthier in terms of stuff. We have iPhones and nice cars. But we're actually poorer in terms of our own peace of mind.
In many ways, yes. We have lost that control over our own time. Which is why using your money to buy back your time, to buy autonomy, is the most valuable thing you can possibly do with it.
The ability to take a lower-paying job that you enjoy more. The ability to survive a layoff without panicking, that's real wealth.
That's it. But society tells us wealth is a Lamborghini. This is what Housel calls the man-in-the-car paradox. And this comes from his time working as a valet.
I love this observation.
Yeah.
It's so simple and so true.
He says when he saw a Ferrari pull up to the hotel, He never once looked at the driver and thought, wow, that guy is cool.
Never.
He looked at the car and thought, if I had that car, people would think I am cool.
It's a total disconnect, a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology.
It's a psychological glitch. We buy fancy things to get respect and admiration from others. We think the car sends a signal of status. But the people looking at our fancy things aren't admiring us. They're just using our stuff as a mirror for their own daydreams. They don't care about you, they care about the car.
So luxury goods don't actually buy you respect.
No. Humility, kindness, and empathy buy you respect. Horsepower does not. If you want respect, be a good person. If you want to go fast, buy the car. But don't confuse the two goals.
This leads perfectly into the definition of wealth versus rich. And I think most people use these words interchangeably, but the deep dive notes make it clear they're almost opposites.
Rich is current income. It's visible. If you drive a $100,000 car, we know you're rich, or at least rich enough to make the monthly payment. We can see it.
But wealth is hidden. It's invisible.
Wealth is income not spent. Wealth is the option to buy something later. It's the money in the bank or in investments that you don't see. It's the car you didn't buy so that you could retire a year earlier.
The diet analogy he uses here is perfect.
It is. Exercise is like being rich. You're doing the work, it's visible, you're sweating, people can see you doing it. But wealth is like the diet. It's the decision not to eat the pizza after the workout. It's about restraint. And restraint is hard because it's invisible. No one compliments you on the fancy car you didn't buy.
That makes it so hard to create role models for actual wealth, doesn't it?
Exactly. We can see rich people everywhere. We can't see wealthy people. They look like everyone else.
There's that story about Rihanna in the notes.
Oh, right. She nearly went bankrupt early in her career, and she sued her financial advisor. She claimed he managed her money poorly. And the advisor's response in court was it was brutal.
What does he say?
He said essentially, was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money?
It's hilarious, but it's so profound. We are trained to think that having money means spending money. But true wealth is the money you keep.
Which brings us to part 5, practical philosophies. So how do we actually apply all this in our daily lives? We've talked about the theory, but what do we actually do?
First up, the case for saving. And Housel argues for something that I found really interesting. It's called saving for nothing.
This goes against so much standard advice. Usually financial planners will say, save for a house or save for a car, save for your retirement. You need a goal.
Right.
Housel says, save for a world that is unpredictable. Save because you don't know what is coming. Save for the car repair you don't expect and the medical bill that comes out of nowhere.
He uses the energy crisis of the 1970s as an analogy here.
This is brilliant. In the 1970s, we thought we were running out of oil. The whole world was panicking. But we didn't solve the energy crisis just by finding more oil. We solved it by becoming incredibly efficient. We built better cars, better factories, better insulation in our homes.
Efficiency is something in our control. Finding oil is basically luck.
Exactly. You can't control the stock market returns. That's like finding more oil. But you can control your savings rate. That's your personal efficiency. And past a certain level of income, most spending is just your ego approaching your income. If you can suppress your ego, you can save more. And that savings is what gives you the freedom and control we talked about earlier.
I love this next concept, and I think it's maybe the most important one for people to internalize. Reasonable is greater than rational.
This is where the soft skill part of finance really shines. We are told over and over to be rational investors, to be cold, calculating machines, to follow the spreadsheet no matter what.
To be like Mr. Spock.
But we aren't Spock, we're human, and sometimes the mathematically perfect strategy is a disaster because you can't stick to it emotionally.
The syphilis story. I'm not going to forget this one anytime soon.
It is memorable. So Julius Wagner Jauregg, he was a psychiatrist in the early 1900s. At the time, syphilis was a fatal disease, and it drove people insane. There was no cure.
A terrifying disease.
But he noticed that very high fevers seemed to kill the syphilis bacteria.
Okay, I think I see where this is going, and I don't like it.
So he started injecting his patients with malaria.
With malaria?
Yes, a deadly disease in its own right. But malaria causes incredibly high fevers. The fever would kill the syphilis, and then they would treat the malaria with quinine. And it worked. He won a Nobel Prize for it.
That sounds absolutely awful.
It was. It was a rational decision. Better a few days of agonizing fever than a slow, painful death by syphilis. But it wasn't reasonable to ask people to suffer through malaria. It was torture. Eventually, we found penicillin, which cures the disease without all the suffering.
You want the cure without the pain.
Right. We take Tylenol for a headache because we hate fevers, even if the fever is nature's rational way of fighting an infection. We choose reasonable over rational all the time.
So applying this to finance.
Applying this to finance. A rational strategy might be to use tons of leverage borrowed money when you're young, because mathematically you have time to recover from a crash. A spreadsheet would tell you to do that. But if the market crashes and you lose 90% of your money, you won't act rationally. You will panic. You will sell at the bottom. You will quit. You won't sleep at night for a decade.
So the story about Harry Markowitz, the guy who won a Nobel Prize for portfolio theory, the literal father of modern finance math, he didn't even use his own math for his own money.
No. When an interviewer asked him how he invested his own money, he said he split it 50-50 between stocks and bonds.
Which is not mathematically optimal according to his own theories.
It's not mathematically perfect, but he said he did it to minimize future regret. If stocks went up, he had some. If stocks went down, he had bonds to cushion the blow. He wanted to sleep well at night.
That's the real goal, isn't it? To be reasonable. To have a strategy you can live with. One that you love enough that you'll stick with it when times get tough. If your strategy looks great on paper, but makes you want to vomit when the market drops, it's a bad strategy for you.
Aim for peace of mind, not just maximum ROI, because peace of mind is what allows you to stick around for the long term and let compounding do its work.
As we start to wrap up this deep dive, we have to look at the warning Housel gives us about the future. He calls it the historian's fallacy.
We love history. We
Right.
love to look back at past events and say, see, it was obvious this was going to happen. But Housel warns that history is really the study of surprises. And we keep trying to use it as a map of the future. We say, well, in 2008 this happened, so in 2024, this is what will happen.
But the world is driven by these completely unpredictable tail events.
Think about the 20th century. It was defined by a handful of people: Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Gates, and a handful of events. World War II, the Great Depression, the invention of the atomic bomb, 9/11.
And you can't predict any of those things.
You can't. And you can't predict the ripple effects. Look at the chain reaction from 9/11. It's just mind-boggling. 9/11 happens. In response, the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates to 0 to stabilize the economy and keep people calm.
So cheap money flows into the system.
That cheap money fuels a massive housing bubble. Everyone starts buying houses they can't afford. That bubble bursts, causing the 2008 financial crisis. The job market collapses.
So millions of people can't get jobs.
So they go back to school to ride out the recession. This creates a massive surge in demand for university tuition, which leads directly to the student loan crisis that we have today.
You could never draw a straight line from 19 hijackers on a plane to the student loan crisis a decade later.
No model can predict that. It's chaos theory in action. Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist, says the lesson from a surprise isn't, I should have predicted that. The lesson is, the world is difficult to anticipate.
So stop trying to be a prophet. Stop listening to people on TV who tell you exactly where the Dow Jones will be in December.
They don't know. Nobody knows.
So be prepared, not predictive. Build a margin of safety. Save for things you can't possibly foresee.
That's the only rational and reasonable thing to do.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered everything from janitors and executives to ice ages and malaria. If we have to boil it all down for the listener, what's the one big takeaway from the psychology of money?
That money isn't really about math. It's about behavior. It's about survival. It's about knowing when you have enough so you can keep your freedom. If you can master your own psychology, your fear, your greed, your ego, the math will eventually take care of itself.
And I'll leave you with this final thought from the source material, a quote from Bill Gates, actually. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose.
So the question to ask yourself is, are you learning from your wins, or did you just get lucky?
Something to chew on. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.